Podcast by Friday, episode 48. Start with the lobby, or start with some open space that is not going to cost you anything. Conserve your capital, and build it from there. If it turns into something bigger, well, be adaptable. Podcast by Friday with Bill-Griggs and Kingsley-Grant. We help people to create their minimal viable podcast by taking bold action to defeat procrastination and to get their voices heard.
I'm Kingsley-Grant.
And I'm Bill-Griggs.
And you're listening to
Podcast by Friday. Hello, Kingsley-Grant. How are you today?
Hey, Bill, I am doing incredible. I am just so excited to once again get behind this microphone to record one of my favorite things that I've to do is to record my podcast with you as my co-host and Podcast by Friday. So whenever I'm doing this, I mean, they would say hog heaven, whatever that is. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Kingsley, I look forward to recording Podcast by Friday, not only because I get to talk to you, but because I get to talk about really cool things that are going on in my podcasting experience and with my audience. And that is one of the great benefits of doing a show like this. For those who are new to Podcast by Friday, we're a show that teaches you how to launch a minimal viable podcast. In other words, just what you need to get it done quickly.
And that's what we've been doing over the last few episodes. If you have been listening, and if you have not, we want to suggest you do, but breaking things down in small bites, helping you to better get going in a viable way, in a minimum viable way that is not overwhelming. And one of those parts we're going to do today, which I think is so cool, is, and if you've ever been a part of this, you'll see what it is as we start unpacking this show. Is meeting with your audience members. That is so cool.
Oh, yeah. I tell you, Kingsley, some of the best experiences I have ever had have been as a result of actually meeting members from my audience. Now, I remember 2 years ago when we went to the podcast movement conference that was held in Chicago, Illinois, and had a great time there meeting other podcasters and discussing things that were going on. Well, I let it be known inside of my Facebook group for the CNC Router Tips podcast, which is my other podcast for those who are not familiar with that I was going to be in Chicago on the week of the conference, and that I would love to meet up with someone from my audience. Well, I got a response from two guys that have been in my Facebook group from like day one. And they said, hey, we're up in Upper Peninsula, Michigan. Not a quick trip to Chicago, Illinois. But they're in Michigan. And they said, man, we would love to take a trip down and meet with you, Bill, and, just get a chance to finally meet you. I mean, we've chatted back and forth on inside of Facebook, but we'd really like to get the chance to meet you. And so they drove down. And they came to the conference, and we got to spend a few hours together, and it was fantastic. I think you remember this, Kingsley.
Yeah, I did. I did meet those guys that you introduced me to, that came to hang out with you, and it was quite a drive, wasn't that for them?
Oof, yeah. I don't know exactly how many hours, but it wasn't. A quick trip. It was probably 4 to 6 hours, something like that, to drive over. Kurt Hammond and Dave Van Antwerp were two of the guys that made the trip down to meet with me. And I will tell you, because of that trip and because of the time we got together, we developed an even stronger bond, a more closer relationship, and it really helps. And, knowing that there are people out there who are into what you're into and what you're talking about in the podcast, it's a fantastic way. So,
it's really a great, I've seen people who are podcasters who have these meetups and stuff, which we discussed in previous episodes. And it's almost like a fanboy type of thing. Here it is. I see people who are, this one person shows up and they're like tripping over their heels to go and meet with them. And it's almost put them in a celebrity status. And the good part is this: as you're listening as a podcaster or a future podcaster, you can have that kind of influence. You can become that rock star where people will drive for hours and you're thinking to yourself, wow, you had no idea you could make this impact. And here's Bill talking about, because of his podcast, he's able to have people driving a few hours to come and meet with him. And I think it validates something about what it is you do that you may sometimes even question, are you making an impact? And I've heard so many podcasters wonder if they are. Those are the moments, I believe, that put that stamp on it. You're making a difference.
Mm-hmm. And it really makes you think, why would you want to meet with your audience members? And, to me, it's a simple set of circumstances that, why wouldn't you not want to meet with your audience members? You're able, when you meet with your audience members, to develop a personal touch,
Yes.
Just a little something that you just don't get on the air, finding out, that Pat Flynn's really kind of shy when you first meet him, or Jamie Masters giggles a lot when you talk to her. I mean, these are people I got to meet in person whose podcast I listened to. And to me, it was an amazing thing.
Yeah.
To them, it may, I don't know what, response it had to them, but I do know one thing. Both of those people that I just mentioned, Pat Flynn from the Smart Passive Income podcast, and Jamie Masters, she used to be known as Jamie Tardy, from the Eventual Millionaire podcast, both know that I'm a rabid fan of their content, and that if I get the chance to be in the same place as they are, I'm going to try and reach out and get them, because I really enjoy their message and I want to develop a more personal relationship with them.
Which I think it brings about that face-to-face thing, because sometimes we hear people and we've never seen them. We see a picture, but it may not convey truly until you meet that person. So I think that personal touch is a great, if there are no other reason, it personalize the relationship. So which I think are why, again, is to build that relationship, is to take it to another level, is to be able, like you described, Bill, when you met with those guys, you're able now to have a deeper relationship with them, because they've taken it from online to offline, back to online. So you're going deeper and deeper, and nothing beats, I believe, your success. It's critical to have relationships. I believe success cannot happen without good relationships. I believe one of the things I did one time, a whole teaching on this, how relationship content marketing, because I believe building relationships is key. And imagine with your audience members, you're now say, hey, on your show, oh yeah, Bill, man, it was so great to have connected with you in Chicago, and you can talk in that manner where it makes it personalize it, and that person feels so important. That relationship has been cemented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. I was just listening to a podcast episode from another. I listen to all sorts of podcasts. And,
Me too.
One of the podcasts I was listening to was Funnel Hacking Radio, and there was an episode on there where they interviewed a guy whose name was Cowboy. That was the way they referred to him. I'm sure he has another name. I really don't remember it, but I do remember what the content was about. Cowboy had been on Shark Tank, and he got a deal going with Damon John, one of the sharks, the people's shark. And he described what happened when they got together afterwards. They had that personal meeting. And Damon sat down and they talked about the business. And he says, Cowboy, why don't we just start by getting to know each other and becoming friends, and then we'll worry about the business details afterwards. And then he says, wow, okay, that was really not what I was expecting. But then as he got further on into that relationship and other relationships where he met other successful entrepreneurs, it always started with that, hey, let's just get to know each other and form a personal relationship. Then we'll worry about the business details and whether we can work together. And it clicked to me that this was an important phase, to build that relationship with somebody to help you in whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. The relationship come first.
And you couldn't have said it better than that. And I think it's also great in also building those relationships, because you can get the kind of feedback from those relationships you may not get from just any other place, because that person is invested now. They are going to more than likely want your best and see you succeed. So getting feedback, I believe, is also important, and meeting with your audience, because the reason why they're listening to your show, they're getting something from that. And they want you to become better so that they can get better stuff from you. And I think that's the place you can go to know what else to give to them, what else they might need. So I think that is, if you commit yourself to those, when you actually have a chance to meet your audience, to listen to them, ask questions, let them be the hero of the conversation. Let them provide you with the things that you can help you serve them better. So that's a great way, I believe, of even building content, and more content for your show.
Somebody giving you feedback on what it is that you're putting out there and letting you know that they'd like to see more of this type of content or less of that type of content, or they want you to go deeper on a subject. That is invaluable information to you as the podcaster, to know, what it is that your actual audience really wants to hear from you. I pay for that kind of information.
Yeah, because other than that, you're kind of just shooting from the hip and hoping that something will land somewhere, because you really don't know. You're just kind of testing out and hoping that it does land. This way will tell you exactly what you need to do and to connect even deeper with your audience.
And sometimes as a result of these conversations, you will come up with new ideas and share them back and forth. Sometimes in the back of your mind, you've been working on a program like Kingsley and I were discussing before we got together for this podcast today. We have a little brief session getting together where we talk about what's been going on in our businesses and in our lives, and things that we're thinking about implementing and new ideas to share. And it's always nice to get some feedback from someone the minute you have an idea and say, hey, look, I'm thinking about doing this and adding this to it and coming at it from this angle. What do you think? And they said, well, that's pretty cool, but you might want to consider doing this. And that's where the real growth comes in, where they offer you a little twist on something that you were thinking about that makes it even better.
And that's so invaluable. I think another thing I find, which I have done, is taking that relationship even to the level of a guest appearance on your show. So imagine you meet with that person, go deeper, get the feedback, and say, hey, you know what? Man, it'd be a great opportunity for us to talk about this on our show so others can hear how we are developing not only our relationship, but also the value we can bring to the other audience members who are listening. So it's a great way to get guests, and who I think will be they'll be more motivated to be on your show because you have connected with them. You are a real person, and they're not just seeing you as using them for just to benefit yourself. It's mutual. So I think it's a great way to get the right kind of guest for your audience, because they are sometimes the very audience member that you are trying to reach.
And it validates your audience member. It increases in his mind his own value, because if you are an expert on your topic, which you are, when you find one of your audience who's listening to you on that topic has so much information and so many new ideas and things that they would be of interest to your audience, and you bring them on, that raises their level. That really builds them up, and it builds you up for sharing. And you can form an ally or something and help promote somebody and help them grow, because you'll grow when you help someone grow. So, it's just one more reason why you should meet your audience members. Now, the question comes up: how do we go about setting all of this up? How do we set up these meetings?
I think that's a great question you just posed, Bill, because it's not going to just happen by happenstance or by default. As a matter of fact, it can, but it's now become nothing prepared, and people hang around, and it can, I believe, kind of weaken your position if you don't have something when you get up with these audience members. So I believe setting those meetings up ahead of time, again, make it professional. It sends a message that you are serious. This is business. So what if you were to announce through your podcast that you're going to be in such and such a place, and if you, like you did, Bill, if you're close by and can come and meet with us or meet with me, it'd be fantastic. Mm-hmm. And that way they have a chance to prepare ahead of time of this meeting, and they come with some questions or some things to talk about, some topics that you can now even provide more value while you're at that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, you're already recording a podcast episode. You already know you're going to be someplace. Why not tell your members, your audience members, about it in advance and say, hey, I'm going to be downstairs in the lobby of the Sheraton Hotel at the Podcast Movement Conference on June, blah, blah, or July, whatever the dates are, and
right.
say, I would love it if you'd come by and say hello. We're going to have a little get together. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. It doesn't cost much. Maybe you, buy them a drink or something, or maybe not. But, just that letting people know in advance where you're going to be, that can do it. This is the section of our show where we would normally pause for a word from our sponsor. Now, if you would like to be the sponsor of the Podcast by Friday show, and you have a product or service that you feel would be of benefit to new entrepreneurs starting their new podcast, then contact us at podcast@podcastbyfriday.com, and we'll see if you'd be a good fit.
And another way to do it is a Facebook group, because you have so many of your audience members already there, and you may even have a group that you are an admin for, is you're hosting on Facebook. That's another way to let them know what's happening, mm-hmm. and where you're going to be, and you would love for them to connect with you in person at that event. So that's another way. I would just say probably even social media, period, is a great way to announce ahead of time these meetings.
Yeah, if you've already got an active Facebook community going, or you belong in even other Facebook groups that you're a member of, that you're actively participating in, folks are normally, regularly hearing from you, it's a perfect opportunity for you to let people know that you're going to be around and you'd love to meet them. And, obviously, if it's not your own personal Facebook group, you'd want to get permission from the group administrator to put up something like that. But, I would very seldom see anyone who would oppose you announcing, hey, I'm going to be over here. Let's meet up, So
because actually that's what you're doing in the Facebook group anyway. You're meeting up and having conversation. You're only taking it offline. And I think one that is kind of overlooked, Bill, is, and I don't hear much mention about it, and maybe it's mentioned, I just don't hear it, but Eventbrite is another popular platform that can be used to set up a free event. And so it looks very official, very professional, have people go to that link and register. So you know who is showing up. And at least you can prepare ahead of time for 10 or 15 people. But you could also say, hey, you know what? The space we have is just really limits for, say, 6 people, for example. And with first 6 people, it could also create an urgency. So I like the Eventbrite idea because it serves that purpose of professionalism, of having it's well organized, and it's not just a loosey-goosey, it's another term I've used, loosey-goosey kind of approach to this meeting.
I thought Eventbrite was a paid service.
They do. You can have them pay for an event, but you can also have a free event where it's no cost.
All right. See, I learned something today, so that's great. So yeah, Eventbrite's an online service where you can go and basically it takes care of the registration and the ticketing for you, kind of thing. Okay, that's great.
And the key part, the good part also, Bill, is that if you're going, you can also have it set up where, Eventbrite announces it again. Guess who's going to be at this meeting? So Bill's going to be there, Kingsley's going to be there, and so the social media has been kind of populated with that. So you're getting, wait a minute, he's going to be there, she's going to be there, I want to be there. So that's what, again, Eventbrite creates that excitement and that buzz as well.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? You bring up a good point there, and what we've discussed so far in setting up these meetings assumes that there's some other event going on, or thing at the same time that you want to do these meetings, and you can partner or coordinate with the person who's putting on the event coordinator or the host, to add this thing, because everything that you can add, every value that you can add to their conference really helps out the conference. You can say, hey, look, I've got an audience of so many thousands of people, and we are going to be at the conference, and we'd like to have a meetup. Can we announce that on your website as well as the other things that are going on? Maybe that's something that's mutually beneficial. And it not only would get you together with your audience, but it might actually create some future participants in this guy's next event, because they said, oh, wow, this sounded like a cool event. Wish I'd known it was going on. Now that I've seen this, I'm going to be here next year.
And which I think is so cool. At that point, you need to then be specific once you have engaged that event coordinator or host that you're going to have the event, but tell them where are you going to have it. At least that part is very essential. And you could, which I see it's so convenient, it's just so easy, is if you are at an event in a hotel, well, in the lobby. Hey, we're going to be in the lobby, and make sure you also put the time. Mm-hmm. And so the person all the people know where to meet you. And again, it becomes an official meeting, even though it's kind of a casual, but at least it is presented that you are going to meet at a certain day and a certain time and a certain place in the lobby. Mm-hmm. That's one place, right? Yep. There are other places you could also meet too, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh, there's a ton of places besides the lobby. You could actually, take some money out of your pocket and buy a room, or you could partner with like a local restaurant or hotel or some other attraction. Maybe there's some event going on nearby. Most of these conferences we have happen around the same time as other things that are going on in the city. That's on purpose. So that, at the end of the night when the conference is over, people have a place to go. Maybe you all go out to TGI Fridays or to, whatever that place is. and you can meet there. But I like free, so
Me too.
so the hotel lobby, and maybe everybody gets together and you decide once you get there, hey, why don't we take this somewhere else?
Yeah. Yeah.
Other places. Some people will look at the hotel or event place, and they will book a conference room. If you've got to be sure of your numbers for something like that.
Yes.
But
And that's why Eventbrite could give you a chance to know how many people are coming, and you can also spell out what's there so everybody know what's expected and not surprise. Oh, I thought you were hosting this event and paying for everything. Well, no.
but you know what? Our whole concept is about having a minimal viable podcast and doing things with as little cost and as little prep work as possible. So, my recommendation, start with the lobby or start with some open space that is not going to cost you anything. Conserve your capital and, build it from there. If it turns into something bigger, well, be adaptable.
Is that acronym KISS? Keep it simple. I use the word student.
Oh, not stupid?
I keep it simple, student.
I gotcha. All right.
Which I think is also critical, that because as you're listening here, you're realizing that it sounds a bit overwhelmingly, or it could sound overwhelming, but it's not. We are about minimum viable meetings. And therefore, don't wait till the last minute. Don't be me. That's how I have operated sometimes, and I raise both hands, and I know how it turned disastrous sometimes when that happens. And I've learned, unfortunately, the hard way. So I would suggest that you don't wait to the last minute and to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you want to give folks notice for, because, your listeners have busy lives just like you do. And if you give them the opportunity to schedule something in advance, they're more likely to take action on it because they've had a chance to do it. If you let them know about it, 3 hours before the event, chances are you're not going to have a great event. So, you got to do it at least 3 to 4 weeks out from the event. Let them have a window of opportunity where they can make arrangements. They can reschedule things if they have to, so that they can be at the event.
Yeah, you're respecting people's time, and you're also saying you're valuable. Your time is valuable, and I don't want to take it for granted. And the last minute planning can also seem like you threw it together. You were not thinking about it beforehand, and here we go. Somebody may have put it in your ear. People could have all kinds of reason to explain why is it last minute. So keep it in fact that people's time is valuable. Respect their time. Respect your time. Look organized. Look professional. And this is one of those ways to make it look that way.
Now there's a difference once you've already got people there, at the meeting, because you can change up things, at the last minute once you get things going. I remember last time we were at the Podcast Movement Conference in Chicago, we met Aaron Walker and his group of folks, the Iron Sharpens Iron mastermind that they have, and we were doing a little bit of hanging out with them, and they made a decision about halfway through the day on one of the days of the event that we were all going to go out to the Navy Pier and watch the fireworks that evening. Do something fun, someplace fun, and it was kind of a last minute word of mouth thing, but we all headed over there, and we had a wonderful thing. We didn't have any restaurant reservations or anything. We found a wonderful restaurant down there. We had a nice meal, and then got to know some of the guys, and we watched the fireworks display, and hung out and walked back to the hotel. Having that kind of fun experience is just I'm still thinking about it years later, and it can really help to cement your relationship with your audience. So just food for thought, folks.
Yeah, and in that respect, we want you to now plan your meeting. We want you to, well, if you don't have a podcast yet, we understand that. Maybe you could look around and see if anybody else is doing a meeting and going and be a part of that and just see how it's run, what happens there, give you some ideas for when it's your turn. But we do believe that you can do something and not have to wait until that time. And we want you to make this something you plan to do.
Mm-hmm. And bearing that in mind, one event that both Kingsley and I will be attending this year will be the Podcast Movement Conference. We've been mentioning this conference pretty much since day one because it's where we got started in our adventures together through Podcast by Friday. I mean, we created our first episode of Podcast Friday in the hotel room while we were at the Podcast Movement Conference. And we're going back this year to the Podcast Movement Conference 2018. And we would love to meet you, our audience members. So if you're going to be in Philadelphia on July 23rd through the 26th, the Podcast Movement Conference is going on at that time. And we're going to get together with our audience at that Podcast Movement Conference.
We want to meet you there. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't it be so cool, Bill, if when we gather where we decide to meet and we announce that, and someone walks up and say, "Man, hey, finally, I get a chance to meet you. I've listened to you." Trust me, I would feel like on cloud nine to know that you've come up and just said that. Introduce yourself. And I can't tell you what that would mean to us. And we're looking forward to make sure that happens. We're going to then have an Eventbrite page set up for you to register. Mm-hmm. And we'll have that link in the show notes, but also we'll be doing exactly what we said we suggested, announcing it on another show other than this one. So you'll hear it again mentioned. Mm-hmm. And we want to see you at Podcast Movement in Philadelphia.
So great. We would love to see you there. Everything, is all set. If you would like to contact us directly, you can do that through our email at podcast@podcastbyfriday, or you can shoot us a tweet on Twitter. I'm at bill-griggs, and yours is?
I'm at kingsley-grant, KINGSLEYGRANT, at kingsley-grant. So we're looking forward to see you, and let's meet up. Let's do exactly what we've outlined in this show and build relationship, go deeper. And hey, you might be surprised. We might have you as a shout out on our next episode or one of our future episodes. You never can tell. So stay tuned for that.
All right, Kingsley, I've really enjoyed this episode of Podcast by Friday, where we've discussed meeting with your audience members. Some of the great reasons why, you can form a personal relationship and get good feedback and share ideas with them. And, we've discussed where you can set up the meeting and, through your Facebook group or through announcements on your podcast or in partnership with coordinating events with the event host, So we're looking forward to meeting with you and hearing your stories about what it was like when you met with your audience. So thank you for listening in, Kingsley. I have enjoyed doing this show with you today.
Hey, it was a great show. Thanks again, man, for connecting for us to do this. And we look forward to our next one.
thanks for listening in, folks. And I hope you tune in for our next episode of Podcast by Friday. I'm Bill Griggs.
And I'm Kingsley-Grant. I'll see you soon.
Podcast by Friday. Take bold action to create your minimal viable podcast today. Check out new episodes at podcastbyfriday.com or on iTunes or Spreaker.